Welcome to the castle, everybody. This is Nightsaber Z42, and today I'll be reviewing Sentinel Comics, the Core Rulebook by Greater Than Games. Let's get to the table. So here we have our core rulebook for the Sentinel Comics game, and just to mention before we get started, the Sentinel Comics is actually based off of Sentinels of the Multiverse, the card game, which is right here. A very nice, difficult, but fulfilling card game, in my opinion. I actually really love playing this game. But a lot of the concepts that we find in the core rulebook are actually from the card game itself. Things like the environment and how you fight your villains and stuff like that, which is pretty cool that they managed to include some things like that into the core rulebook. So as we open up the core rulebook, the very first thing that I actually want to show off is this inside cover with all of the different comic book covers. Some of them are pretty funny, like this guy's issue right here in the Titanic meme, but it just sets the overall tone of what this game is about. And so this book is about 438 pages long, not including the character sheets at the end of the book. And this is published by Greater Than Games, including the appendices at the end of the book. And the introduction is the very first thing that we find, like in all RPG books. And I absolutely love these spreads that are at the very beginning of the chapter. Not only do you get like a pretty sweet picture, but each spread has the chapter content. So the major themes or the major sections of that chapter are actually here with the page numbers. So you don't always have to go to the back of the book to find a certain concept. You could just look at the beginning of the chapter and then go to that page. The introduction is actually nothing very special here. It just tells you a little bit about what this game is. It's basically a Silver Age superhero role-playing game. That's pretty much all it is to it, and it doesn't really give you any fluff or anything like that, which I'm kind of a little sad about. I really wish they would have fleshed out some of what happened in the world, because the card game actually has a storyline that goes with it, and it kind of ended on a pretty big note from what I've read. So Chapter 2, though, is all about playing the game. So this is going to be most prevalent for players, where you get a lot of your actions, how to set up your hero and stuff like that here. And so one thing to mention, this game is, if you come from a game like Pathfinder or 5e, this is very different than any of those games. And I'll kind of get into a little mini tutorial about those differences when we get started. But the very first thing that we are met with is an example of a character sheet, or a hero sheet, because we're a hero. And there are 2 pages to the hero sheet, and both of them are represented here, each with a detail of what that section is and an explanation about it, which is very cool. I really like that they're setting you up. And here's a really big point about this book in general, in its overall layout. It does a really good job at teaching you how to play and all of the different concepts. It sets you up first, and then it goes into further explanations later. So I really like that. So another major point of this system is that it uses something called the gyro system, or GYRO, for green, yellow, red, and over. So we have things like action scenes, and we have something called the scene tracker, which you can kind of see right here with the green, yellow, and red. And so as we get into things like combat, we use the gyro, or the scene tracker. So we always start in the green zone, which, if you take a look at my character sheet here, we actually have a green, yellow, and red zone. Not only with our status dice, but with our abilities too. So as we go in from the green zone to the yellow zone, we're going to have to start rolling our yellow die here, which for me is a d6, and we get access to our yellow zone powers. And then as we get into the red zone, we get our red status die, which is a d8 for me, and we get access to our red zone powers, which are usually our more powerful abilities. So the way that rolling works, you have powers, you have qualities, and then you have your status, which is whatever it is in the scene tracker. So let's say that I want to use my power suit for something, and maybe I'm trying to do like some sort of investigation. Maybe my power suit is trying to scan a crime scene or something like that real quick. So I'm using my power suit, so I would take a d12. I'm using an investigation quality, so I would take a d10. And if this is the beginning of the scene, I would take a d6. So I have a 12, a 10, and a d6, and I would roll all three of those together, and then I would sort them from lowest to high. So my lowest number, whichever dice rolled the lowest, is going to be my min die, and then I have a mid die, and then I have a max die. And so some of our powers will actually use mid, min, or max dice. Sometimes you'll just roll a single dice as opposed to all three. So that's how rolling is actually done in this system. And it's very interesting because it's not just your standard, roll a d20, add whatever skills you have. You're actually using different skills and powers that are on your character sheet. And this game really asks you to be creative as well. So you have your powers, but what can you do with those powers? That's up to you as a player and your GM also to kind of figure out. So this whole entire section is just giving players the layout over how this game functions, its core systems, and it's really great. I really like the step-by-step tutorials that you get along with the comic panels. It really makes it an entertaining read, honestly. Like if it was just text with the occasional picture, it would be a little bit boring, but with these comic book panels it really pops out. And the overall design of this book too really does stand out. It's very colorful, and especially because every chapter is color coded as well. So at the edges of these pages for the second chapter, they are blue. And as we get into the next chapter, they're light blue, and it keeps going on and on and on. So we get an explanation for all the different things that our heroes might come up with, like twists. Every hero has 2 twists, a minor twist and a major twist, which can challenge a specific hero, which is really cool. You get an explanation for hero points and just the different types of scenes. So you have action scenes, which are like your combat focused scenes. You have social scenes, which are your dialogue role playing scenes. And then you have montage scenes, which are your downtime scenes or resting and recuperation. So it's a very intuitive system, in my opinion, and it really gets the overall theme and the mechanics of, doing a superhero role-playing system, which, is you're going to need that if you're going to try to sell this. And so then we get into one of my favorite chapters, which is creating a hero, which if you've seen my character vault video on this, my specific hero, Nuclear, then you've probably seen all of this. But I do like that they start off with the step-by-step guided method on one page, tells you all the steps and the pages to find it. Very good in setting up anybody who's reading it for what's to come and getting them prepared. And so basically you roll on a bunch of rollable tables and apply powers to your character sheet and qualities and stuff like that. If you already have a hero concept in mind, like let's say you want to rip off somebody like Batman or Wolverine, you can definitely do that. This game has tons and tons of options for your heroes, and also for villains too, which we'll see later on. So you basically have access to anything and everything that has ever been done in a comic book, basically. You can do it. And they really do give you a lot of the freedom as a player to go ahead and pick those things and create the hero that you want to play. And as we delve further in this book, you're also going to see that theme pop up again, like the players are taking control over their heroes. The GM doesn't really get a whole lot of a say. It's a collaborative effort, probably about 50-50 between the GM and the players, that is. And so I really did like rolling just a random hero. It's not necessarily the quickest thing to do, and if you're doing it for the first time, it could seem a little bit confusing, but the book does do a very good explanation at saying, okay, roll this and keep these numbers and then go to this page and stuff like that. It does guide you along, which they should, because it's the guided method. One of the things that I really do have a gripe about with this book, and I can kind of see why they've done this, is the lack of hero advancement or things like leveling up. So in this book, you don't get XP or anything like that. Okay, I can understand that. And overall, when we're really thinking about the overall theme of this book, it's a Silver Age comic book style RPG. So a comic book is usually about 30 pages long if we're really taking a look at it. And they're supposed to be quick reads, right? So this is supposed to be a quick game. So therefore, you're not going to have intricate systems like leveling up. So what they've done instead is they've said you have 6 issues with this hero, okay? And once you have those issues all collected, you can change your hero. So like maybe your hero has come into possession of some new powers or something like that. Or maybe they get a total rewrite. You can do that in between issues, or every 6 issues, or I think they're called volumes here. So after every volume of a collection, you can go ahead and change your hero however you want, as long as it narratively fits. So I can see why they've done it that way. I'm just a little bit disappointed that there's, no clear progression. It's up to the players to kind of do that on their own. Chapter 4 is about moderating the game, so it's for a section for GMs. So here you're going to have things about scenes and setting those up. You get your villain creation area right here, as well as what environments are and the different types of enemies your heroes might come up against. And so here we have a better explanation about what the scene tracker is. So you have your green, yellow, and red zones. And something I didn't mention before, if you're on the very last red zone, once that whole round is done, the whole scene is done. Something really bad happens. So if your heroes are like trying to save all the people from the volcano type of deal and they run out of time, something majorly bad is going to happen there. And your players are going to have to enter into a new scene and try to fix that problem. So scenes can go from one scene to another and start over again, but something major is going to happen in between. Or maybe they actually succeed and then the scene ends and then they move on. So there are 3 different types of enemies that your players are going to come across. And this is kind of reminds me of Star Wars from FFG. You're going to have your minions who can be dealt with in like maybe 1 or 2 hits. You're going to have your lieutenants who are like your mini bosses, and then you're going to have your villains who actually have powers and stuff like that, and they're like on par with your heroes. Only they have a ton of HP. And speaking of HP, minions and lieutenants don't have health. And that's a really weird concept when you think about it. So here's how it works. Minions have a die. So let's see here. This example right here is actually perfect. E Street Thugs, it says D6 minions, 1 per hero. So what that means is this minion is going to have a D6. So that minion's going to have a D6. Let's say that my nuclear hero guy hits a minion. So that minion needs to actually roll his dice for a save. If he makes it, he survives, but this D6 now becomes a D4 with a less chance of actually making it. And actually, the D4 is the last one. If you hit a minion that's on a D4, they're automatically just going to be defeated anyways. If they don't make the save from this D6 roll, then they're automatically defeated. Okay, so a minion can either take a hit or 2 or just automatically be defeated. Also, they work in groups. So the more heroes that you have in the scene, the more minions are going to be grouped up. So lieutenants are kind of the same, but a little bit different. They still get access to a die roll. So let's see. Alien Teleport Beacon is a lieutenant here. He has a D8. So I got my D8. Let's say my hero hits him. Okay, so he rolls and he makes the save. Okay, so if he makes the save, he gets to keep his D8 this time. If he fails the roll, he goes down from a D8 to a D6. And then you'll have to hit him again in order to get him to roll down. So once he's all the way at the D4, if he fails his D4 roll, then that's when he is defeated. Okay, and usually lieutenants get a power but not as much as the villain. The villain, however, gets a ton of health, really cool powers, qualities. They're pretty much like your heroes, only they're bad guys. So there you go. And that's pretty cool. You get explanations for environments, which have their own turn in the scene in a round, and it's usually the last round. And before I actually get into that, this is a weird one. So you don't actually roll for initiative. Instead, initiative is given. So let's say that my hero Nuclear is part of a team of 3 other heroes. So there's 4 heroes altogether, and they're going up against a villain, a lieutenant, and maybe some minions. And then, of course, you have the environment to contend with, which is going to happen at the end of the round with the scene tracker. So we won't worry about that. So let's say Nuclear gets to go first because me as a GM says he can go first. Okay, so then Nuclear, the player controlling Nuclear, gets to determine who's going next. Is it going to be one of the minion, the lieutenant, the villains, or is it going to be another hero? You see where I'm getting with this? So theoretically, all of the heroes can go first, destroy maybe the lieutenant and the minions. Okay, well, yeah. Or they can go back and forth. Just saying though, if you don't destroy those minions and those lieutenants, that means all of the villains get to go first before the environment. And usually the environment will threaten the heroes as well, or whatever is happening in the scene. So you do have to kind of weigh those options. I, as a GM of a game, I would probably house rule that you would go back and forth, but you get to choose on who goes next on the other side. And they actually do say the very first thing that hero needs to do is decide who is going next at the beginning of their turn. That way, that player has ample time to prepare. Of course, they also say that that player can decide ultimately at the end of their turn to change who's going next. So there's also that. But that's a pretty cool mechanic to say, hey, get ready, you're going next, so be ready. This should only take like a couple of seconds. So I really like that because, let's be honest, we've all played with those D&D characters, especially those magic users who always think about what they're trying to do and they don't think about it when it's other players' turn. I'm not like that. I actually think about what I'm going to do like as other people are going. So the next chapter we get is, let me get to that nice little spread so I can show you guys, the Bullpen. So another section for GMs, but this one's about creating your own stuff. So creating challenges and action scenes, minions, lieutenants, villains, environments. So this is actually where we get into how to create a villain and all of the different steps that goes within it. So creating a villain is pretty much the same as creating a hero. So they have things like powers, archetypes, qualities, but they also have an approach, which is kind of like where their dice come from. And they get, I think they get more stuff than heroes do as well. I mean, they have to be powerful. They have to be a challenge for a group of heroes. So, of course, they're going to get more things. It only makes sense. But this is very organized. It tells you the page number, and it really does a nice job of setting things up in the long term. And there's a lot of different options for villains too. So they get their own special section right here, like for their approaches, but then you also go back to the creating hero section for their powers and qualities, and there's a ton of stuff in that chapter. So you could, if you have a concept in mind for a villain, you can pretty much do it. It's really cool. By the way, the artwork in this book just pops. I really dig it. I really do like this overall like artwork. Some of the artwork you can tell is a little bit more serious. It's kind of like Michael Bendis' Avengers run in the late 2010s, where it was like really cool, serious artwork stuff. And then you get some of the cartoonish stuff, which is very indicative of the Sentinels universe. So Chapter 6 is a collection of 2 different issues, or adventures, as they are called. You get Battle of the Bands, which is the tutorialist of all tutorial type adventures that you could possibly run. This is for where you would go if you are new to not only role playing but also as a GM. You would start in this adventure because you would just give your players a character, one of the pre-mates, and say, all right, here's why you're at this party or at this club. You're here to support this hero who is actually a member of a band, and you're going up against another band pretty much. So it's the literal battle of the bands, and it's a really cool, neat, short one-off adventure. It just gives you a taste of how this game is run and how to run it, which is a very important thing, especially if you're very new to DMing. So you have all of the different villains here that you're going to go up against because it is a major battle. It's like a group battle effort, and it's got some really cool environment scenes in here. And then you get to the next adventure, which is not at all connected with the first one, which is a conspiracy of clones. And here you could either go with some pre-made characters, which there are plenty of, which we're about to get to, or you could actually create your own. And this one is a little bit bigger in scope. Basically, you have these clones that have been introduced into the population in secret, and they are activated suddenly, and they start going on a rampage. And so you as heroes have to track down who's done it and how to stop it. So you get several nice combat scenes here, but you also get exploration as you go to the island where this laboratory is, and you can go exploring there. And so you get different types of scenes or scene trackers here as well. Some of them are longer, some of them are shorter. So you get a good mix of things. It's still an introductory adventure, but it's one that feels heavier. It feels like you have more weight in what's going on. And you can actually continue this overall scene as an arc for later adventures as well. So that's pretty cool. One of the things that I really like in this adventure specifically, so you have these clones that are going around, but the main villain of this specific issue has cloned some heroes. So you also get these nice cloned heroes that you can just pick from, or you could roll randomly for. And so they have their own superpowers and stuff like that, and they kind of go head to head with your heroes. It's really cool. I really did enjoy reading through this adventure. And then we have chapter 7, the archives. So this meaty chapter here is basically like the monster manual of the book. You get a plethora of heroes, villains, minions, lieutenants, environments to play around with. Just a collection of things to pull from. So you have staples like Legacy, who has been renamed to Heritage, if you've ever played the Sentinels of the Multiverse game. So you have his character sheet here, and then you have his biography and what's happened to him in the card game and since. And then you have the different hero groups that are hanging around, like the Sentinels of Freedom, which continues with Legacy, which is actually Heritage's daughter. So you get her character sheet, her biography. So I actually really do like the fact that I recognize some of these heroes from the card game, especially staples like Bunker and things like that, and they actually have some really cool stats and abilities and things to pull. Would I actually pull them and give them to my players? Probably not, but I mean, they could make a cameo in like an adventure, and that would be pretty cool in my opinion. But then again, let's be honest, I would probably just do my own thing, my own world that's separate from the actual multiverse thing that they have going here. But I mean, if you wanted to, you definitely could. Then you have your newbies, the Daybreak, which is from the first Battle of the Bands issue. So Headlong there, Rockstar, who's the singer from that one. So just a really cool overall collection of heroes. Then you get to your villains. And so you have your staples like Baron Blade from the card game, Misinformation, which I believe she was in one of the expansions. So it's really cool to see some of these. And there are also some new ones. So they didn't just pull from the card game. There are some actual brand new ones. So if you're already used to some of the staples from the card game, worry not, because there's some brand new stuff in here. So we get some of the ones from the adventure, Battle of the Bands. as well as from the card game and from the different factions from there. And then we get to our lieutenants and our minions. So here's a collection of minions. Before this, we had our lieutenants, like Blade Battalion. So they're kind of just intermixed here. And I do really like that they have a mix of aliens, robots, just a whole different variety of, different things to fight and go up against. Devices, like an auto turret, little transformer dude. Look at this. Molten lava slime thing. A freaking mega truck. It's really cool. I love the variety. Just look at that. Just standard ninja. You go up against standard ninja. And then you have your environments, which are pulled from basically the card game. So you have Megalopolis. And it also has things that happen like minor twists, major twists, and stuff like that. These are environments. They actually get their own turn. And they always happen at the end, just before the scene tracker flips, I believe. So these are just some places that your heroes can go to. You don't have to use them, but you could also pull ideas from here as well. Which, let's be honest, is probably what I would do if I was making my own world. And last but not least are the appendices, which is where your index is. And then you have your character sheet. I really would have preferred if the index and glossary was actually at the end of the book as opposed to close to the end, but I can also see why, because, the character sheets are always the last thing. So you got your colored sheets, and then you have just a black and white sheet. So you can also find this, a fillable form, on Greater Than Games' website. So there's also that. So overall, if you're looking for a superhero-themed game, role-playing game, there's actually a few options. We have Mutants and Masterminds. You have, I think Marvel has a RPG book. I think DC Comics also has one, but they're pretty old, fairly old. You can do a genre-neutral system like Genesis or Fate Core. You can convert those into a superhero style games, and there are actually several additions to helping you do that. But Sentinel Comics has really come up with some innovative concepts, like the scene tracker, the way you roll your dice and skills and powers and stuff like that. The tags, I really like the tags. It really does ask the players and the GM to be creative with how they use their powers and their skills, which might turn off some people. But then again, you're in it for the role-playing game. You're in it for the experience. So you are only limited by your own imagination, basically. This system is easy to use. It's easy to play. And most importantly, at least for me, it's very easy to teach. I can just give out character sheets to my friends or family that happen to be visiting and say, we're going to run a one-shot for a superhero game. And I can just teach them how to play right then and there. Just say, these are your tags. If you want to do something, use one of your tags, use a quality, and then I'll let you know what the status is, and you would just roll 3 dice and then just go from least to greatest, and then I'll tell you if you succeed or not, and stuff like that. I would say that one thing that might throw people off, or actually 2 things that might throw people off. One, this is a very heavy Silver Age game. There's going to be a lot of people that have powers. And it's like if you go to an MMORPG, what was that superhero MMO that from a long time ago? It's kind of like that. You're going to have heroes walking up and down the street. You're going to see villains just suddenly crashing into things. And, some people are going to be into that and some people aren't. I think a lot of people are going to have a lot of problems with just how quick this game is played. And I already talked a little bit about this, about how comic books are about 30 pages long. And so they're supposed to be bite-sized adventures. And so that's what this game is. This is perfect for if you want to do one-shots. Really quick one-shot games. Just quick adventures that can be maybe a couple hours long. This isn't going to be something that I would sit down for like 5 or 6 hours like I would with Dungeons & Dragons. And in fact, this game is faster in that regard. Whereas in Dungeons & Dragons, there's a lot of things that can hold you up. whether it's somebody figuring out which spell to cast or anything like that. This game doesn't really do that. This game makes things quick. You go from one thing to the next thing, from one scene to the next scene. Things are happening left and right. This is kind of like the Michael Bay of adventure games or role-playing games. Michael Bay has a lot of things that are just action, 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 explosions here, explosions there. That's what this game is. And some people want that. But some people kind of want, Zack Snyder's version of Justice League, where things are a little bit more toned down and slowed. It takes its time, and then when the moment is right, when it's perfect, you finally progress. I would actually recommend this game as a superhero game, mainly because it's the newest hot thing, but also because it does bring some innovations. I really do like that tag system. It's really cool. I would definitely highly recommend this game. Even if you've already got your superhero book, I would just say give it a try. Who knows? You might like the fast-paced nature of it, or you might not. But then again, you could always slow things down, Really make your players aware that they're going to have a super secret identity and that they have to roleplay as much as their average person's superhero identity as they are going to actually play their hero. So you can do things like that and slow things down or slow the pace down if you want. But that's up to you as the GM. But I would still recommend this. Thank you guys so much for watching. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Give this video a huge thumbs up to support this series. And subscribe if you would like to see more. I will see you guys in the next video.